All right, welcome everyone to our webinar today on creating conversation cafes and English conversation clubs. My name is Melina Gallo. I'm with Light of the World Learning, and I'm here today with my colleague and dear friend, Tanya Griffin, and we're going to talk about our own experiences with conversation cafes and share about some of the successes, the challenges, the practical aspects of it, and give you some ideas for starting one in your community if that's something that you might be interested in. So,
So, Melina, I was wondering, I began this ministry and I heard a lot about your English cafe. You call it an English cafe. And I'm wondering, how did you start? Well, actually, no. First of all, what is the difference? Because I am teaching English as a second language, or English language learning. And I was wondering, how does that differ from the cafe? How does teaching and the cafe different? So what is an English conversation cafe?
yes, well, Tanya, I am so glad you asked because ESL classes are very different than conversation cafes in a lot of ways. Um, an English as a second language class, or we have all kinds of words: ESL, EFL, EAL, English as another language, English as a foreign language. But English language learning classes are usually pretty formal. So they take place in a classroom or an online classroom. They usually have teachers who have been certified in some way. They follow a textbook or a structured curriculum. They'll have a board that they write on. And in contrast to that, a conversation cafe is just a very informal and relaxed setting. Sometimes it's held at an actual cafe or restaurant, at a church, a library, in someone's home, or a community room. And so the setting is different and the purposes are different as well. So ESL classes are typically more structured. We follow a sequenced curriculum with assessments. Typically, learners in those classes are of the same level, so that you might have a beginner class, an intermediate class, an advanced class. Um, in contrast, again, the Conversation Cafe is not really following a sequence curriculum. It usually follows a topic or a theme each week that we're just going to chat about. It's guided by volunteer facilitators rather than teachers who are teaching. And it's just meant to encourage conversation. So, for example, this would be really good for me because for my Spanish, I've taken many years of classes in Spanish. So I know all about Spanish grammar and Spanish vocabulary, and I can read Spanish really well, but I need a lot of practice still in having conversations in Spanish. And that's the main thing I would like to do. And so for me, signing up to take another Spanish class at a community college or online would not be really helpful for me. I just want to sit down with people who already know Spanish well and talk to them so I can sort of get my skills up. So that is the purpose of a conversation cafe. Also, ESL classes tend to be skills based and focus on the four main skills: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Conversation cafes, we don't really do any reading and writing. It's mostly speaking and listening, and it's in a very low pressure setting. You're not getting graded. You're not being tested. And finally, one of the differences between them is ESL classes have a longer term commitment. For our Light of the World classes, for example, we often have students who will come for 8 weeks, twice a week for 8 weeks. And many of them continue for months or even years because it takes about 1,000 hours to become proficient in a new language. And so it does take a lot of time. In contrast, the conversation cafes have a lower commitment. You can just drop in whenever you want. All levels and ages are welcome. And you can come once a month, you can come once a year, you can come every week, whatever works with your schedule. But if you miss one, it's not like you'll fall behind the rest of the class because it's not structured according to a curriculum. So I hope that helps. Tanya, did I leave anything out?
I really appreciate that overview and especially the example with the Spanish learning as well. I would benefit as well from just having a conversation with somebody in Spanish for my Spanish learning. And so I can see the benefit really and the encouragement that the conversation club or cafe offers. And so I think it's a great idea.
Well,
I enjoy it.
good. And so Tanya, I know you've been doing a conversation club in your community. Um, how did you get started with doing that?
Oh, yes, getting started always involves prayer. Always involves prayer. And I was so encouraged to pray when I saw I printed out the handout that you have in the Light of the World Learning uh class or coursework, right? And I know there's a resource link at the end of this presentation. But yeah, I started praying for clarity, God's will, people, place, location. I mean, yeah, location, um, and what God would have in mind. I also was led to look in the community and see what was already going on, what people were doing. And I did find a church that had already been hosting an English club once a month, and I did contact them and join them for several months. And actually, I'm still serving with them today in their English club. And that really helped to find out what's going on, what is the need, the clarity, and God's will for this community here. So yeah, thanks for asking. And how about yourself? How did you begin with the cafe?
Yeah, yeah. So we started about a year and a half ago at my church doing a conversation cafe because part of the reason is we really wanted our congregation to get involved with the international community in our area. And we were not ready at that time to do formal ESL classes. So we just wanted to just start to do introductions and get people interested and aware of all of the immigrants and refugees that we have living around us. So we started meeting once a month for 90 minutes in the community room at our church. We're located in the Midwestern US, outside Chicago. And it was interesting because we have a large Hispanic community in our area, and we thought that that would be the biggest group of people who would come to the Conversation Cafe. But actually, it turned out that most of our guests are Arabic speaking men. And we also have a few who speak Farsi, but most of them are from the Middle East. And we now have one person who speaks Spanish, Um, so it was just interesting to see the people that God sent. We started when we started out, we were doing it at lunchtime, and so we would order pizza, and many other people would bring things to share. So we had all kinds of wonderful Middle Eastern food and lentil soup and falafel, and then some of our volunteers would bring chocolate dipped strawberries and brownies and cookies. So it was just fun to break bread together, to eat together. And we generally, the structure of our conversation cafe is we open with a prayer. We have a little icebreaker or a game of some sort, and we give a printed out paper that has conversation topics. So like for September, since it's back to school, we'll be talking about school, and we like to share intercultural exchanges. So we'll ask, like, what is school like in your country? And um, tell us about your experiences. Did you go to, you know, primary school? And who was your favorite teacher? And things like that, just to get people talking. And then because our learners wanted more structured exercises, we started adding a group exercise with a Bible story. And then we also added a song, a simple song in English. And because our community room had a piano and we had one of our volunteers played piano, he would play songs for us. And so it was just, again, that wasn't what we had planned initially, but God kind of brought that all together. And so right now we have about 15 or 20 people who show up each month. About half of those are volunteers, and half of them are English language learners. And so it's been wonderful to see this program and how it's changed and developed.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Melina. I really am inspired too on some of the things that you shared about. With the conversation topics and the group exercises, I'm finding too that they want a little more structure. They want some kind of maybe a grammar, usage or something like that, or maybe it's roots, prefixes, and suffixes, or something like that. But yeah, that's terrific, and I love the piano player. That's just a beautiful addition to that. So yeah, yeah, thank you for sharing on that. So for my example, we actually meet once a week, and it is on Thursdays, and it's from 6 to 7:30, so it's at night. And it's hosted by three different churches in the city. And so one church has it two times a month, and the other churches pick up the other once, 1 week. So yeah, we do have a shared dinner. Generally, that's something homemade, and maybe it's like tonight we're having a taco bar, or maybe it's meatball sandwiches. It's something pretty easy. I do have a budget with the church that I serve at, both churches that I serve at, and they provide for that. Our conversations are about 60 minutes. Sometimes we go a little bit over because the conversation is really good, and that's very helpful. The childcare, we try to provide childcare. Usually it's either a volunteer who's trying to get their internship hours, right, for childcare, or we'll just take if the parent has a child, we'll go with that parent and maybe the other children and have the conversation out there. So one of the volunteers and a parent will go out and watch over the children either on the playground or in a room filled with lots of activities for them. Um, I really enjoy the evening. We walk away, both of us being blessed. That's the guest and also the volunteers. It's a great evening for building language bridges, and yeah, it really does help with that conversation and give them a lot of confidence in speaking. I also found that they like to have I think when we actually get in the group, we usually will break into smaller groups. And so, like, either like one volunteer who's an English speaker and two that are practicing is a good match. So,
Mhm.
1 to 2 ratio because they can build off each other and they can help, right? And so they get to know a little bit more. Um, I think it lessens the pressure when you're one-on-one with an English speaker. So, anyhow, we have anywhere from 7 to 25 people attend each week. It can even be just three. But they're still very precious and very needful, very just dear to our hearts to do. Yeah, the 25 people one, that had a lot of volunteers. It tends to be a high volunteer ministry because you're really seeking to build that relationship. 1 to 2 is pretty good. Sometimes it is one-on-one. I find if I sit at a table with, like 6 people or 6 or 8 people, there's less time for them to speak English. And so that's why I went into the smaller groups once we get together. So there's a higher rate of them speaking and listening. So the volunteers are leaders in the church, and I have about 20 people that I send the invitation out to, but I've got about three pretty much veterans that come every month. So at my church, I host it and I invite the volunteers. So those volunteers can serve once a month. At the other church that I serve, that's twice a month. And so that church brings in their volunteers and I just lead and plan the evening. So that's what that kind of means on that. So the guests are low to intermediate language learners. Um, They are typically refugees, asylum seekers, longtime residents and citizens in the US as well. They could be here 50 years or 20 years, and they're still wanting to learn the language here. Their native languages can be Arabic, Chinese, Farsi, and Spanish as well. The dedicated ones really are the Arabic. They're, from Syria, from Egypt, from um, I forget where else, but usually in those areas. And we do provide handouts and activities, and we have discussion topics. I think we're missing a little bit of the bottom, or at least I can't see it, that inspire and encourage. Um, and the activities and discussion topics I do create. We do start with prayer, and I'll read, I have a mission statement as well that I read before we start. And then we break into groups and have our discussions. Well, we have dinner and then we break into groups and have our discussions and then close with a prayer as well. And so we have a couple examples to show you as well, the activities and discussion topics. So, so Melina, can you share a little bit about like what kind of things do I do for that 60 minutes? What do you do?
Yeah. So there's really a lot of different kinds of activities, and we've tried all kinds of different things to see what our learners like and don't like. Um, we have a lot of it, it'll be the volunteers' ideas. So, one of our volunteers really likes to do crafts. And so for Easter, she had us like making little origami Easter baskets, and we were learning vocabulary like fold and diagonal and corner. Um, Sometimes we will play games or tell jokes. A lot of times it's just very informal, like without any activities. It's just, so what's your name? Where are you from? How long have you been here? Just getting to know you questions. But it's interesting because we do have people from very different levels. And we found that a lot of our Arabic um, learners did not read and write English at all. And so when we had printed conversation questions, that didn't work well for them because they couldn't read. And um, so we try to do a mix. I try to do a mix of like easy, middle, and more advanced activities. And I'm going to give you a sample of some of those. So at our last conversation cafe, we started out with a simple activity of just different ways to say thank you and you're welcome. So everyone probably knew thank you and you're welcome, but they weren't as familiar with things like I appreciate it, I am grateful, no problem, my pleasure, anytime, you're welcome, or things like I owe you one. So there's all kinds of different ways that we say thank you, and so we just practiced some of that, and that was fun and pretty low level, low stress for them. And then we went into, we just went around the room and said, what are you thankful for? And it could be, again, with the beginner learners, they could just say things like, I'm thankful for my family, or I'm thankful for this beautiful day. And then others really went into testimonies and, things like I'm thankful for Jesus who saved me from a refugee camp and brought me to this country. Really powerful testimonies. So it's interesting the different responses you can get with those kind of open-ended questions. And then finally, I always like to share scripture content, and not all cafes do this. It depends on, your purposes and your audience and your area. But I shared just a short Bible story about Jesus healing 10 lepers, and only one of them came back to say thank you. And Jesus said, has no one returned to give thanks except this foreigner? And we talked about, foreigners and why a foreigner might be more grateful than other people. They had some really interesting insights about that. So that's really powerful as well. When we do introduce scripture, we always have them read it in their native language first before we introduce it in English. So we would read it in Arabic, read it in Spanish, and then read it in English. So that's a more structured exercise. We don't always do everything that structured, but it gives you guys some ideas of some of the things you can do depending on where your learners are at and how the Spirit leads you. So, Tanya, what are some of the activities that you do?
Yes, yeah. I really appreciate you sharing yours too, because that just gives me more inspiration. And yeah, you're right. There's a ton of things on the internet to do and to download and just to pretty much um you can just use straight as it is. The one thing I didn't mention too about our guests that come, the language learners, is that some are believers and some are not. And so and maybe they're of another faith. And so I generally, that's why we have the mission statement that we state. And then we also, I'm always praying over the activities. It's like, okay, but Lord, I want to, where are you in this, right? And leaving those open-ended questions does allow for someone of faith in Christ, right, to have a testimony and to share. And so that's kind of the goal, is to do it that way, to let somebody testify or to have an open-ended questions like, yeah, I like, what are you grateful for? And then that person did walk through that door and share about Jesus. So that's terrific. So this is one of the handouts that I have. It's got many more questions on this, other than what I have here. And I really liked it because it did combine something like, would you rather? So it's a grammar kind of focus to talk about your preferences and then having them practice that a lot. So for example, would you rather have fancy clothes or a fancy car? And then I gave them the base, I would rather have because. And so, and then, actually, too, you can have follow-up questions too. It's like, oh, that's really interesting. That's what I would like too. Or, um, you know, the follow-up questions are where you can build the conversations, or they can just stick to the script. Mostly they build off of it. And then you'll see at the end, I included this word-wise, this prefix of pre, because it's kind of in preferences. So I took advantage of that. And so I give a little instruction on that. On the handout, my volunteers, I like to draw in the volunteers to say, basically, if you can speak English and you have a willing heart, you can come. I don't care if it's your first language, second language, or fifth language, it doesn't matter. Actually, the ones that have gone through the process of learning English, right, and through the long many hours and have overcome all that are some of the best volunteers because they can give their friends encouragement. For example, that's what I have going on right now with one of our participants. She's been here for 10 or 12 years, and so she comes to the club to help her people that are coming in from her home country and to practice her English as well and give them great encouragement. So that is terrific. So this is what I did is I got something off the internet and then I rework it. So some of the questions might have been inspired from something that was on the internet and some not. So let's see the next slide. So this one is an actually just printed out page of the Light of the World curriculum. It's a role play. It's for some of our lower students that can have something just to hold on to. There's other role plays that have open-ended questions between a cashier and a shopper, right? And so these are the questions that a cashier would you generally ask, and then these are the kind of questions that a shopper would ask, and then they can build the conversation off of that. And then I've also used the teacher parent kind of conferences when that starts coming up in like October. And people have found that very helpful as well. So using things out of the Light of the World curriculum helps feed that activity at the club. Ours is called an English club. I didn't, that's just what we've called it all along. So let's see the next slide. Okay, and then these are talk time topics that I have used as well. I've had a online English club and an in-person English club. So for the online English club, I basically just took one of these topics and just went straight down it. It's got a great picture that inspires conversation, and then it has um, kind of questions to get you warmed up with the topic, and it moves through those, and then it does end with scripture and encouragement in Christ. So yeah, they have videos and scripture links and things like that. And so I found these very helpful. For the online, I do that. For the in-person, I kind of reworked it a little bit, um, just so it had like a series of questions and things like that. So I just reworked it just a tad for in-person, but great inspiration here on the talk time topics. Now, one of the questions I have for you, Melina, is, when we've been at the English club with the people that come, and um, we do have the regulars that come, but I always struggle with is the promotion. Because if the regulars don't come, it's like nothing. And I've tried many things. So how do you promote the English club and bring people in to it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we really um, we really worked hard at trying to get people. Um, we had flyers printed up that that are basically like this slide you see here. And I went all over town to every, business, restaurant, nail salons where there are a lot of Asian speaking people, different ethnic restaurants. And we also shared it with the ethnic churches in our area. And that was really helpful because actually, most of our people come from one Arabic speaking church in nearby, and so that was great reaching out to them. The other thing we do is our church has a food pantry, and so when people come to get food, we give them these flyers as well, and that's another way that we get people in. Um, we're also starting so and now we've moved the conversation cafe, so it's actually in the same part of the church as the food pantry, and so before or after the conversation cafe, people can also go to the food pantry and get free groceries. And so that's been a great way to get the word out as well. I've also, I've gone to the libraries, I've gone to all of the English language schools in the area, the community colleges, the other places that do ESL classes and given flyers to their teachers. So, one of the challenges, though, we have with this is there's not a lot of public transportation in our area. You really need a car to get anywhere. And so a lot of the people who come, it's hard for them to get a ride. They usually ride in groups. One person will have a car and, six people will come with them. And so finding their way there, getting transportation there has been a little bit of a challenge.
Thank
Um,
you so much for sharing, Melina. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that is
absolutely.
those are the same challenges that we have as well, is the promotion. I picked up a couple new ones that I could try, but it's generally the same places that we have also put out our flyer. Did
Mhm.
you have anything else to say about your promotion? Did
Oh,
I
I,
cut
I
you
didn't
off?
mention the
Yes.
volunteers. We're
Oh, go
also
ahead.
promoting it to our volunteers. Our church has done a great job of that. So our church has a first Saturday serve, and they have multiple. We try to get everybody in the church to volunteer the first Saturday of each month at something, at the food pantry, at the conversation cafe, at various different things. And so we've really had tons of volunteers, and it has been no problem getting volunteers. It's been actually harder finding the English learners and getting them there.
Fabulous. Yeah, fabulous. Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah, our volunteers at the other church that I serve, well, at one of the churches I serve at, they do have the life groups come in and serve, and that's where the big 25 was. So that's probably that ratio um, of the 25. There's probably about 8 or 10 language learners. So it was a high volunteer night, and which was good because they were inspired, right? And hopefully you pick up a couple volunteers that'll come back. But it was a life group that was serving together. So that was really helpful. And yeah, same thing with the English classes. We've left our flyers. You'll see our flyer over there on the left. It has the direction, it has the three churches, and they're all in the same city. So, yeah, that's helpful. And, but yeah, the different places, we do find that a lot of our people will come all in one car. And it's one lady who brings them. And if she's like right now, she's in another country. So then all the people don't come. Well, not all of them, but a large percentage of them, about six of them, can't come because there's no ride for them. I've often desired and prayed for like a van. Could we have a van? Because that is the problem. Even though we have public transportation, it's not happening. They're not taking that. That doesn't it they They just want to get there. Maybe it's because it's at night. I don't know. I don't necessarily think so. So, anyhow, a couple of other places that I've also promoted is I went to the swap meet here locally, where we have a lot of, it's at a community college parking lot. And that community college does have has English classes, which I've promoted the club with as well. And so they offer a free speech area at the swap meet. And so I just have to kind of stand on the outside of the swap meet. And I have a banner and signs and handouts, and I just stand there until somebody comes by and asks about it, right? Usually it's a sign that gets their attention. This one, the flyer, is one of the signs and things like that too. So I had several people ask and good inquiries and really thoughtful to come, and they never came.
Hmm.
So I'm not serving at the swap meet anymore because it was very hard. It was a really hard promotion, but that's the way the Lord directed me, and what he wants to do with it is up to him. So on the right, you'll see our mission statement that we read at the beginning of the English Club. And it says the English Club exists to encourage, equip, and inspire our neighbors who are learning English. And through dinner, conversations, and activities, we seek to build relationships because Jesus teaches us to love our neighbors as he has loved us. In our time together, let us all listen patiently, respond thoughtfully, and share considerately. So whether they know all those words, typically they get the idea, and the Lord can work on that. So I'm thinking anything else. So I'm wondering, Melina, about some of the, if you, I know you've mentioned challenges along the way and some successes. What might be your vision as well moving forward with the English Club?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. Yeah, so we have talked about some of the challenges with recruitment and transportation. Some of the successes are, just building relationships with people over the past year and a half, getting to know them and mutual understanding. I mean, I think it's really important for the volunteers. Many of the volunteers don't have any international friends, and just hearing about somebody different is great, and vice versa. So those friendships are terrific. Having people share their testimonies. And just having a place where they can come and be in community. A lot of them, a lot of people, they don't have American friends, and so it's just a chance um, to practice their English in something that's not really high stakes. They're not at a doctor's appointment trying to speak English, or at a store where the cashier is demanding something from them that they don't understand. It's just more relaxed. So it's been very helpful, I think, helping them in those ways. I think our vision for the future is we would love to see people become more involved um, in knowing the Lord, and also if they are, we're trying to invite them into more activities in our church, letting them know about resources and other international churches in the area, because our church is basically an English speaking church. Um, and also, um, some of them, we're encouraging them to maybe further their English studies and come to an English class. So now our church is offering English classes on site. And so once they feel a little bit more familiar and comfortable coming in the door of the church, they may be able to access our other resources like the worship services, the children's activities, the food pantry, etc. So that's kind of our our vision.
I
And
love that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And how about you, Tanya?
Yeah, yeah, the challenges we've shared along the way, definitely. The successes, I totally agree with the relationships that we've built with them. And do know too, with the conversations, it's a two-way street. If we're asking about their education, we're sharing openly about our education experiences as well. And so, yeah, and the questions can be, they can just be factual, and sometimes it's kind of like your opinion, as you could see from the would you rather. So we do share that, and there's lots of great community and building bridges between them. Yeah, and I agree. Some people might not have somebody, a friend that has been from another country. So very good success on that, and just the love of Christ is there that night. Our vision too, I'm tending towards for next year a little bit more instruction because we did take a survey and they filled it out and they gave us some of the ideas of topics that they're interested in and how things are working. And one of the things is just they wanted a little bit more instruction in the grammar. So I have to keep it very light because by the volunteers that we bring in, we're looking to just saying if you can speak English, you can come, right? We don't
Mhm.
want you to be an English teacher or anything like that. So something that's kind of explained and understood very briefly and very easily um, to kind of practice that. So that would be moving towards that. Possibly, I don't know. We might possibly take down the dinner maybe to be snacks. Not sure. I'm kind of noticing a lot of them aren't eating. If they're eating, they're kind of like just a little polite little plate, right? So that might change. And then we have a church where we have a Spanish church on site as well. So I would like to see maybe on Sunday between the two church services to have English tutoring. Um, could have the conversation as well. Maybe I could pull it up there instead of the teaching, but several of them have expressed that they want to come, but they have no transportation. They want tutoring, but you have to go to their home. And that's a high commitment. So it's pretty much a one-on-one to go do that. For example, I have someone nearby and I tutor her and she's only about a 12-minute drive away. But when all is said and done with meeting her twice a week, that's 4 hours, right? It's the hour and a half with her, it's the commute, it's a little extra time. It's a high time commitment for one person. Um, and as the Lord has it, I'm still there. So I would like to see classes, but also I'd like to train more tutors that could go out and meet them where they're at, because a lot of them I've noticed they're isolated by language, isolated by arriving in a new country. And so I would like to see more people coming in. Oh, I will say too that the one place where we get a lot of our guests, our language learners, is from an agency that brings refugees and asylum seekers into the United States.
Mhm.
And so sharing with them the ministry has brought them in. And so they're our main people. Yeah. So. And we do have a large group from Ukraine too. They're beautiful people to get to know too. It's a beautiful ministry. It really is. It's a beautiful ministry. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing about that, Tanya. And I wanted to let you guys know we have additional resources. You can go to our website, lightoftheworldlearning.org, and that's where you can find the talk time conversation topics if you're interested in using those. All of our curriculums available for free. Um, Digital downloads or just view it online. When we also have a couple of articles here on starting a cafe and starting an ESL ministry. So we will share these links in the YouTube site. And if you received an invitation to this webinar, you have a link to these resources in your invitation. So I just want to thank everybody for being here today. It's been really great to share this with you. Thank you, Tanya, for all that you have shared. And we really appreciate you.